Hello, this is Chris Cooper, and a big welcome to the Business Elevation Show on Voice America. It's great to be back with you again for yet another great show with another fantastic guest. I'm delighted to welcome today Elizabeth Lotardo to the show. Before we do that, I'd like to say a big thank you to my guest of a couple of weeks ago. I had a little holiday to see my mother last weekend, being Mother's Day, and I got to look after your family and I interviewed Seth Kahan, and we talked about grand challenges. That was 2 weeks ago, and that was a really fascinating interview. How do you manage really, really huge, big projects that potentially can be transformative, can be life-changing even for many, many people. So Seth took us through a little bit of a blueprint on how to do that, and we had a great conversation. So if you're interested in grand challenges, for me, this is really important as our theme going through with the show that we are all about amplifying good, about amplifying the good work that people are out there doing. We're also about in a world where the narrative is quite negative, quite dark right now. I've done this show now for nearly 600 episodes, and I've interviewed so many people who are doing amazing, amazing work, like Elizabeth today. And the mainstream media often just don't pick up on this. And we start to think that the world is a very dark, a very gloomy place. And at the moment, there's a natural kind of zeitgeist, call it a background theme of anxiety. We're in the week right now where Trump announced tariffs. So when you listen to this, no doubt you will know President Trump, what a little bit more about what came out of that. But quite a challenging time in the world. It certainly feels like that in the United Kingdom. But there's so much good going on. So many people doing great work. So many people trying to improve the narrative, trying to improve some of the world's problems. And that's what this show is about, and what I'm about. I develop leaders, teams, and business cultures. The Business Elevation Show has run since September 2011 weekly, and also I lead an international community of exceptional people who are contributing to a better world out there right now, called the Elevation Collective. So let me less of that. Let me focus now on my fantastic guest today. I'd love to welcome to you Elizabeth Lotardo. And I'm delighted to recommend an interview and recommend Elizabeth's work. I know her. I know her business partner well, who actually also happens to be her mother. We'll talk a little bit about that. Lisa McLeod. We'll talk a little bit about that, I'm sure. But Elizabeth is doing incredible work. She's a consultant. She's a writer. She's a LinkedIn learning instructor. I'm going to talk today about her fantastic new book. It's called Leading Yourself. I have read it. And I think it is just a book that you need right now. It describes itself as finding more joy, meaning, and opportunities in the job you already have. Because you might not be in a job that you love right now. It might be a stepping stone to something else. And therefore, how do you lead yourself despite imperfect bosses, weird economies, lethargic co-workers, annoying systems, and too many deliverables? So that's what we're going to talk about today. Um, we're going to explore mindset today. We're going to explore some of Elizabeth's experiences. Elizabeth worked with some incredible companies like Salesforce, Hilton, and Berkshire Hathaway, which many of you will know. And so, whether you're a senior leader, a new manager, or someone looking to find meaning in your work day to day, this is going to be really helpful. And just also to let you know, the credibility of Elizabeth, she writes for Harvard Business Review, Wall Street Journal. She's and been featured on NPR. I'm not quite sure NPR is being a Brit, but maybe Elizabeth covers that. So, Elizabeth, lovely to welcome you today.
Thank you for having me, Chris, all the way from the States, where NPR is our national public radio.
Oh, is that National Public Radio? Thank you. Thank you. I'm not hadn't not picked that one up before, so that's good to know. So where is home?
Home for me is
Let's
just
say.
outside of Atlanta, Georgia, so in the south of the US.
Yeah, okay. So and were you okay with the storms? And there was real terrible.
Yeah, I fortunately was. It passed through my area, but not directly over me. Several, though, of the surrounding communities did not fare as well as we did, though.
Yeah, it was really, really tough time, wasn't it? One of our we have an interview in the archive with a friend of mine, Deep Copenhagen, who was a mayor of Atlanta, Georgia, and we chatted extensively about the storms and the impact there. Really, really tough. So tell us a bit. Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say, there's some quote that always sticks with me. I forget who said it, but in times of crisis, it's look for the helpers. And when everything is going wrong, like a natural disaster, there's always people who are willing to help. And I saw that in my family and my neighbors, how quickly people were able to spring into action for strangers. And your intro about how the world feels kind of dark and gloomy is certainly true. But if you look for goodness, you'll find it. And I'm excited to dive into that in this combo.
Well, I think it's so true, isn't it? And we yeah, I'm thinking back to things like the sort of spirit when countries find themselves at war, for example, people come together, don't they? They help each other, they dig deep, and relationships are formed in those situations. I don't think it's Google. I think have I remember hearing someone telling me about goat rodeos where they actually create almost like a crisis over a weekend, and so everybody sort of rallies together and they all support each other to they find something to work on and that's a challenge for a client, and it just brings that spirit of people coming together to sort an issue out. Um, so tell us a little bit, like what's life like for you? What goes on in your world on a typical weekday?
Well, as you mentioned, I have a new book out called Leading Yourself. So I spent a lot of time writing that book, and now I'm spending a lot of time talking about that book. But aside from that, I do a lot of employee engagement consulting work with some big companies, and I also instruct for LinkedIn Learning. So I have courses on finding your purpose at work, coaching in challenging situations, all these kind of gritty workplace topics that contribute profoundly to our happiness, but aren't as widely discussed.
Yeah, and do you have any hobbies and interests outside of work? Do you
I
have
do. I'm a
you-
mega nerd. So if you are seeing any video of this, you'll see behind me, I'm a big reader and love to read. I also do Legos and play video games and other like traditionally 14-year-old nerdy boy hobbies.
really?
Yeah, you don't expect it, but I can kick some butt in Fortnite.
Oh, can you?
I can.
Ah, and my kids would be. You said he could kick my butt in Fortnite, definitely.
Maybe not your kids though.
I don't know. They used to be pretty hot on it. They sort of lost a little bit of interest of late, I think. But tell me, I've introduced Lisa, your who's your business partner, and your mum, and she's fantastic. I've loved
Good.
interview. I think I probably interviewed her on leading with noble purpose and selling with noble purpose in the past, and I've always enjoyed my conversations. And so, what was it like growing up with your mum? Because she sounds to me like she's probably pretty inspirational. And how is it now being a business partner with your mum?
She is pretty inspirational, but don't confuse that for a lack of accountability. Lisa McLeod runs a tight ship. But I did grow up with that duality of you can be this great communicator, this inspirational leader, and also get things done. And that duality has certainly informed my own work with leading yourself, which is recognizing there are some challenges that you need to solve and you deserve to feel great along the way. So working together has certainly been interesting. As you mentioned, she has leading with noble purpose and selling with noble purpose. She approaches the challenge of employee disengagement from an executive standpoint, from a customer relationship standpoint. I approach that challenge from the other side of it, which is from an individual contributor standpoint. So our work has unsurprisingly become very complementary, and we often refer to our books as spiritual cousins. There's a lot of shared ethos there.
That's nice. And I love my mum, but I couldn't imagine working with my mum. I don't know why, but I just wonder how have how do you navigate that the family? Because I work with a lot of family business as well. How do you navigate that together so it's harmonious?
Every business has tricky relationships and every family has tricky relationships. So when you lump the two together, it can be kind of complex. I think it's been a work in progress. We've certainly had our fair share of disagreements and challenges to figure out dynamics, but at the core of it, we have deep respect for each other and we want the other person to be successful, which isn't always found in a traditional business. So that advantage for us has certainly outweighed any type of challenge along the way.
Yeah, yeah, and I can see it as being something really, really positive, and clearly is. So tell me, what made you decide to write Leading Yourself?
Well, unlike a lot of your guests, I didn't have some giant aha moment to write Leading Yourself. Leading Yourself was a concept I toyed around with in 2017 with LinkedIn Learning. In 2017, LinkedIn Learning was building out their leadership library. They were really new into the human skills space, they were traditionally more technical. And I pitched a course like, hey, what about leadership, but like just for you, right? We have all of these courses on leading other people and how to make them successful. What if it was just one about leading yourself? And because they were in hyper growth mode, they were like, yeah, sure, whatever, go do that, fine. Um, so I did, and I started to dive into the research around this topic. At the time, I was getting a master's in organizational psychology, and I became really interested in the concept of self-initiated employee engagement, making oneself engaged as opposed to waiting for a great boss or a great HR team.
Mm.
And so I launched this course in 2017 and it did well. And then during the pandemic, it exploded. And I think the reason for that is because everyone or a lot of people went home. Their boss wasn't right next to them. Their cheerful colleagues weren't right next to them. The direction was hazy and unclear. And it became really obvious that the only person looking out for you is you. And it's up to you to find that inspiration and direction. And it's up to you to drive results. So when I saw the uptick on that course in 2020, I updated it with everything I had learned about employee engagement in that 3 years and really started to get traction. And then in 2024, I finally felt like I had enough credibility in the space to write a book about it. I had enough stories and enough proof points to know that self leadership is a key driver of employee engagement, of innovation, of discretionary effort, all the things organizations care about. It's also a key driver of our own sense of happiness and fulfillment at
Yeah,
work.
yeah. So you're saying that the company isn't always to blame then?
Not always. And we certainly want to hold leaders to a high standard, right? So much has come out around what organizations can do to foster innovation, to drive engagement. And the more we know, the more we can do. But at the same time, I think the pendulum has swung a little bit too far in terms of organizations being beholden to their employees to create this exceptional work experience. The
Mm.
reality is, and certainly my view is, each of us have the ability to create a work experience that is better than what we have inside the job we already have. And you can do it from whatever seat you're in. You don't have to wait for your company.
That's why I actually really like the book because I think it's very valuable to both parties as well. It's very valuable for the company to have employees who take self-ownership and it's also very valuable to share, which you do in the book, lots of principles, ideas, thoughts that can help you with your mindset, with your behavior, dealing with other people. That maybe it takes if you stumble through them over a number of years, takes a long time. So I like the way that you'd assembled these ideas into one helpful place.
Well, thank you. It certainly took me a long time, like it does most people. And I
Yeah.
shared in the book, self leadership is not something that came naturally to me. I entered my first job with really high expectations of meaning, of fulfillment, of opportunities, and was let down. And a decade later, I can see that a lot of that was on me and my false expectations and my inability to see the power that I did have.
Yeah. And so is this book is it more aimed at younger people in the workplace or is it relevant for anybody?
It's relevant for anybody. There's certainly tips, tricks you can apply in a senior leadership role. That said, there's, a saying the best time to plant a tree was 100 years ago. The second best time is today.
Mm.
If you don't have the skills of self leadership, it doesn't matter where you are in your career. The time to learn them is now. It's never been more important. But
Yeah.
if you're starting your career, you have a unique advantage in diving into this concept.
Yeah, I think it's a good answer because like you, I work with people of lots of different ages, and actually, there's some things in this book that are helpful to anybody, and s- some of the things that may seem obvious to you and I, having been in the space for a long time, can be revelatory to anybody of any age, really. So the first, you open the book with finding purpose in a normal job. So why do some people struggle to find purpose in in work, and how can they reframe their mindset so they do?
Purpose is a big word, and the narrative around it hasn't done us any favors in terms of finding it. I'm sure you've seen on LinkedIn that graphic where I think it's a Japanese concept called ikigai, where
Right,
all the
yeah.
circles come together and what you're good at connects to what you love, connects to what the world needs, connects to what you get paid for,
Yeah.
and it all looks so perfectly aligned and fulfilling in this graphic. But rarely does anyone center point say, like junior data analyst, entry level accountant, right? Those are functional
Yeah.
jobs. So we're fed this narrative that work should be this deep source of fulfillment, and that if it's not that for you, something is wrong and you need to change your job. But what the research tells us, and what a lot of us have lived experience that tell us, is that purpose doesn't really play out like that. It's not this magical joining of forces. It's small moments of knowing that your work makes a difference, and you don't need to wait for your boss to hype you up or for HR to spell it out for you to find those moments. And the more we can channel our energy towards creating a sense of purpose, forcing ourselves to find those moments, really doing the inner work, the more likely we are to experience the feelings that we so often chase in other places.
Hmm. Do you think for people who maybe are ambitious and they're in a role right now that isn't fulfilling, is it helpful to adopt a mindset to appreciate this might just be one step on the journey, and to learn from it what you can, because I meet young people sometimes are very frustrated what they're doing. I'm thinking, but you could be doing something entirely different in a year's or two's time if you shift your mindset a little bit. And actually, what you learned in this job, even if it was a bad boss, I learned to look back on my career. I learned some of the best things I learned about leadership from having one terrible boss. There's actually a silver lining or a gift in some of these scenarios.
There's a gift in all of them. You just have to look for it. Um, and the data right now is telling us, right, that 2 in 3 people feel stuck in their jobs. Globally, we are in a challenging job market. So many employees have made peace with, I'm not going to change right now. This job is not my favorite, but I'm here. And my question, if that's you, is okay, you're here, valid decision. How are you going to make the most of it? Instead of holding your breath for a better job market, instead of lamenting about how annoying the job you have but are planning to stay in is, how can you change inside of this role to make it something meaningful?
Yeah. You talk about in one of the chapters, see what you look for. Um, you see what you look for, and it's really, I think it's a really helpful frame, that because we can we look to find meaning, don't we, in all sorts of situations and scenarios. And if we catch onto something being negative, we're all going to see it, always going to see it. But if we catch onto something being positive or reframe it, we'll probably only see positive. Tell me a little bit about that frame, because I think it's very valuable for people.
It's a timeless truth that you see what you look for, but we often lose sight of it at work. And a therapist friend of mine explained it really well. She said, your brain is like a wheelbarrow. And when you have a rut, like a wheelbarrow pushing through the soil, it's almost like after time goes on, the wheelbarrow is being pulled into that rut. So if you're like, my boss is a toxic jerk, right? And that's your wheelbarrow rut. Every typo they make, every okay period email they send to you, every small thing your brain is going to latch onto to pull you back into that rut and reinforce that belief. But if you can shift yourself and say, I'm going to define a new path here, I'm going to push my wheelbarrow on a rut that says, my boss is an imperfect person who is probably trying their best.
Yeah,
That's a pretty neutral yet generous statement that applies to most leaders. You see their actions differently. And because you see them differently, you feel differently about them. And when you feel differently about them, you respond to them differently. So it all starts at that tip of the spear of, what am I looking for? What beliefs do I have that I'm conscious of or unconscious of that I'm constantly reinforcing? And are those the things that I want to be propelling towards, or do I want to redefine it?
yeah, yeah. So could something like with your boss, you're very frustrated with them. I've heard this done in marriage counseling when you get two people together, and the marriage counselor suggests that you start showing the positives about the other person. Is that a way of reframing? reframing your mindset around your boss, for example.
It certainly is. It's a forced exercise to build a new wheelbarrow rut and to forge a new path. So you don't want to convince yourself that your boss is perfect if they're actually kind of a jerk, but looking for evidence that they're an imperfect person who's simply trying their best or at very least doesn't personally want you to fail, that can be helpful because it enables our brain to move from emotional resentment into tactical maneuvering. How am I going to make the situation work instead of just stewing in how much I don't like it?
Yeah. Isn't it true that we're all probably imperfect?
I would certainly, speaking on behalf of myself,
Oh, yeah,
absolutely. I would certainly say so.
yeah, yeah. I think I've tried to tell my wife I was perfect. I think it would be received with quite some amusement. And my kids.
Well, really, anyone. And leadership is so hard. And similar to purpose, we know so much about leadership now, and there's so much evidence to suggest the more leaders are empathetic and innovative and creative and nurturing and all of these things, the better they are. And that's true, but they're also just people and they don't get it right 100% of the time, and they probably didn't have enough training. So let's meet in the middle.
Yeah, cut them a bit of slack. I always remember somebody who worked for me um, used to give me one person used to give me the most in terms of a hard time, probably that I seem to remember. And then I gave her someone to report to her, and she after a few weeks she sat me down and she said, "I need to apologise." I said, "Well, why is that?" She said, I've been a bit hard on you, and managing people it's hard, isn't it?" At that point, we became friends.
It's true, and it's played out in so many shows and movies and personal experience. The favorite line I have about that phenomenon is from the movie American President, which is probably a not good reference to be making right now. But the president looks at his chief of staff and says, "How's the view from the cheap seats?" Right? It's always easy to play American lingo, armchair quarterback, and to know what other people should be doing from the outside. But when you sit in the seat and you experience the pressure from above, the boot on your neck for metrics, the organizational overwhelm, it feels differently.
Does it? So it's really hard. It's really hard. So one of the things you also talk about in the book is quiet fear. Uh, and I think that really sat with me because I remember at times in my corporate career, probably sitting with quiet fear for, for many days of the month, actually. I probably generally had that sitting in my gut. So that made me think about how do we go about actually controlling that? How do we move out of that space of quiet fear?
It's tough. And when I wrote the book, it was before, or when I turned in the book, it was before the widespread use of AI in the way we're seeing now. It was before the political landscape changed in the United States, and fear was still on the table. Now that is tremendously magnified, like tenfold. But the suggestions on how to identify this underpinning of quiet fear and manage it still apply. And the two that have been most helpful for me is to first articulate the upside of something. Force your brain to do it. We are primal creatures who latch on to threats. It's how our evolution has kept us alive. Our brain is designed to keep us alive, not to keep us happy. You got to do some work on the happiness front. But the more you can force your brain to identify the upside, the more you move into a space of strategic thinking, creativity, optimism, all those feel good, chemicals in our brain. So, for example, let's take the threat of AI. AI is going to take my job. I'm never going to be able to work again. What does this mean for content creation, right? What's the upside? I can scale my content in a different way. I have more tools at my disposal than ever before to put things out creatively. I can create content faster. I can make it better with less typos. Like
Yeah.
you're not denying the very real threat, but you're layering on this notion of maybe there's something in it for me. Even if it's small, forcing your brain to do that helps.
Yeah, yeah. And with AI is one of those examples where there are some real benefits of AI as well as challenges. So I sound like I won't name drop him, but I was talking to an ex-director of MI5 and MI6 this week, and he was saying, thank goodness for AI because we need it to solve some of these problems. There is some upside, but then on the other side of it, from an employee perspective, you need to be good, don't you? You actually with AI because there is a risk. There is a risk it's going to take jobs, and I suspect it will take those jobs who from some people who are not as good as others who may keep theirs.
It's about to get a lot more competitive. So I'll
It
tell you
is.
the second brain hack you can use if you feel your anxiety around fear start to, get a little higher. It's the phrase, this is my chance. Forcing yourself to identify an opportunity inside of a challenging situation. So with AI, this is my chance to learn new skills. This is my chance to prove my value. This is my chance to bring my uniquely human abilities to the front of my role. What inside this scary thing is the opportunity for you? You have to force your brain to find it.
You do. And the other thing too is as an employee with AI, there's actually a tool there that could really, really help you with your job and help you with your thinking and help you with your creativity and and your strategizing. I was been shocked actually of late of going into some companies who really don't and sharing a bit about AI and how excited they've got. I sat down with one employee and she said, "What's that?" Hadn't even heard of it, which I just found quite astonishing that you could actually get to where she was, and you didn't even know what AI is. So I think it's something you want to get to know and understand and use.
Yeah,
Um,
your time is now to get out ahead of
yes,
it.
the time is now, isn't it?
It is.
You're absolutely right. And so if you started with that, that's a nice mantra for every day, actually.
This is my chance.
Yeah, it's my chance.
Yeah, it's a brain hack I learned from a mindset coach named Tessa Romero, and it applies in so many situations to force your brain to, okay, the world is swirling, some things are not going my way, I'm feeling anxious. How
Yeah.
do I step into this? It's my
Yes.
chance to do what?
Yes. Yes. Have you got an example? We've just got a minute till we go to commercial break. Have you got an example yourself where you had to, this is my chance helped you?
Yeah, well, the AI one was kind of personal to me. But I'll give you another one. Because of AI, book publishing has become a lot more competitive.
Yeah.
ChatGPT can write a book for you in one day, and you can self-publish it on Amazon the next day.
Yeah.
So, as an author who spent over a year on their book, this is my chance myself. This is my chance to prove my work with stories that are relatable and human. This is my chance to be timely, but also evergreen.
Like it. Excellent. Well, on that note, after the commercial break, we're gonna come back with lots more practical ideas, thoughts, ways that you can lead yourself. I think this is really, really important stuff. And I really recommend to people if you've got a pad in front of you, you might not if you're driving, obviously, but if you've got any way of noting down, maybe just pick two or three things that are really helpful to you. It might be this is your way, and then what you can do is reflect on those and take them away and use them. Because what I want from for you from this show and listening to the Business Elevation show is you get lots of ideas, lots of nuggets that are going to help you to step up and help us out of some of the situations and scenarios the world finds itself in right now. So do join us again after the break, and we'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes. Hi, this is Chris Cooper. I'm with Elizabeth Lotardo, and we're talking about leading yourself. And I've really enjoyed the interview so far. I think there's some really helpful frames, ideas in here. And one of the ones I want to explore now, Elizabeth, is now people listening right now, you must have all experienced at a time when maybe you felt kind of lethargic or you felt like you were stuck in a rut and you just didn't know how to get out of it. So I'm interested, Elizabeth. I know you talk about in the book about generating momentum. How do you, and if you're feeling flat, you're feeling stuck, or you're feeling frustrated, or you're annoyed with your boss or one of your colleagues, how do you generate momentum and get yourself over the other side in a very positive way?
The first step in leading yourself is to recognize this is a momentum game. So often we try to approach our careers pragmatically and like logically, what's the best thing to do, or strategically, what's the best thing to do, or from a boss standpoint, what's the best thing to do to please them. And all of that stuff matters, but none of it is possible if you're burnt out and depressed. You
Mm,
have to get your momentum, you have to get the wind at your back to do anything. And trying to approach your giant to-do list from a point of what's the most strategic when you're burnt out, it's not going to work. Instead, you need to, at the very start, reclaim your momentum by doing the thing that feels most interesting to you. Of all the things you have to do, spend an hour doing the thing that is the most interesting. And what the data tells us and our own lived experience is that when your energy is up, you're more efficient, more creative, more productive for the rest of the things.
yeah.
So that hour is an investment in your ability to do the rest. And so often we don't make it. We slog through the entire list based on some other stupid prioritization lens.
Thinking that there are millions of people around the world who work in, for example, call centers,
Mhm.
and they're having to make, call after call, whether it's whatever that may be. It might be the way I tend to work a lot is in insurance, and actually the work can be quite repetitive. And actually, there's people monitoring you, and there's people
Mhm.
reviewing you, and some of them have even got AI working out what they've done right and what they've done wrong. How do you build momentum in that situation?
So if you don't have the autonomy in your role to spend an hour doing what you think is fun, and from the second you sit down, you are told what to do by someone else, and it's not fun. The option you have here is to modify the periphery. That's the surrounding elements of this core work experience. Where are you sitting? What's the lighting like? What are you drinking? Not suggesting alcohol, but maybe some sparkling water. Are you listening to music on your way to work? What are you doing after work? Are you moving your body on your break, or are you scrolling your phone? All of the things that are within your control, those are yours to optimize. So you may not have the ability to change this core thing at the center. It may be draining and it may be hard. But your ability to zoom in on elements of the periphery, everything that surrounds your work experience, and move those levers can be game changing for your mental health.
That's a great suggestion. Mental health is a big thing, isn't it?
It
Right now.
is. And it gets a bad rap. And I appreciate Gen Z for bringing mental health more predominantly to the workplace. I think there have been some false assumptions that it equates to a lack of accountability, a lack of performance metrics, that you get to, call out every day for a massage because you're just not feeling it. And that's not the truth of it. To focus on mental health is to recognize that you control your energy. There are things in your hands that are impacting how you feel, how you show up, and what you deliver at work. And being able to manage that is a skill that you'll use your whole life.
Mm. Mm. Uh, I also wonder, someone suggested this to me recently, that because we've made mental health such a big thing, that we can, throughout my lifetime, I've always had times when, little times where I felt a bit low, or felt a bit flat, but if we, and other times when I've been on top of the world, that whole range of human emotions. Is there a danger with mental health that we could, on those moments that we feel flat, we could now be labeling that mental health, and that maybe my mental health suffering, I'm not, and we go on a downward spiral when actually it's probably a natural range for some of it. I appreciate some people get very depressed and very good reasons. So, but do you think maybe the labeling of it as
That's an interesting question. I do think it can become self perpetuating. And if you label yourself as someone who is depressed and define yourself as that, what other options do you have other than being depressed? To your point, there's certainly extreme cases, and this is a wide spectrum, but we become the story we tell ourselves. And if the story you tell yourself is I'm too anxious, I'm too depressed, then that's certainly how you're going to show up in the world. So there's validity, in my opinion, on recognizing that feeling low at times, feeling nervous about the future, feeling, mad because someone didn't do something that they said they would, those are part of the human experience for everyone. And over indexing on them doesn't do anyone any favors.
No. I spent a friend who was suffered with his mental health quite a bit, and I'm trying to help him. And but I would meet with him, and he would be quite very negative, and this has happened, that's how, and this is awful, and that's bad, etc. So one day I said to him, I said, look, I'm spending time with you, and we're friends, and we're spending time socially, but the danger is in our conversations that they keep spiraling downwards. So if you want to keep spending time together, and it's in it's in my relaxation time as well, can we have conversations that only spiral upwards? And it worked really well. He went away and thought about it and came back to me and said, "Yeah, let's have conversations that only spiral upwards." And the relationship took a new trajectory, and so did his health, which was interesting. And it
And
took
back
me
to
a bit of
the
courage to do it because I felt I've been building up to it. I felt that slight quiet fear about what I was going to do, but I knew I
what a
had to
gift to
do it.
him, though, that you were able to do that. I mean, that's transformative when the easier approach would have just been to not respond to his text as much, right?
Yeah, well, that's right. You could have started blocking him, but I care about him, so
Well, and back to the wheelbarrow rut we
you
talked
know,
about at the top of the hour, right? Constantly spiraling downwards only makes it deeper. And when you can break that wheelbarrow rut, and in the example you use spiral upwards, that's when a new path starts to form.
mm, mm. So one of the chapters you talk about knowing how to phone it in. What do you mean?
Phone it in, I guess, is an American expression. I
Must
didn't
be.
know
I'd never
until
heard
right
of it.
now.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so it dates back a long time ago where the term phone it in was used to talk about someone who wasn't bothered to show up. Like instead of dropping off your order at the butcher, you just phone it in because you were lazy. And that term has made its way into corporate America to mean is someone who just doesn't try that hard, who does the bare
Right.
minimum just to get by. But my suggestion in leading yourself is that you should be phoning it in some of the time. We all have too much to do, and trying to do your very best on every single thing is going to ensure that nothing is done well. So you have to make strategic choices about what you're going to do the bare minimum for. And to an ambitious person, that's a threatening suggestion.
Right. Okay. So what you're saying, sometimes we can set the standard too high on something that doesn't need to have the standard set, or we can try and keep the bar very high on everything, and then we our health suffers.
Exactly. You have to pick and choose what you prioritize. And on some areas that aren't that important to you or aren't that valuable to your organization, you phone it in. You do the
Yeah.
bare minimum.
Yeah. There are certain profiles of people, Elizabeth, that I work with often. I often find them, and you will do as well. People are very analytical, structured, but they like to be in control, and don't particularly like change, and so can be quite resistant to that change. And it can impact all of us at some time, but I see certain profiles that I work with, and I can pick that up pretty quickly. How how do you loosen that resistance such that you embrace change, or able to help somebody else who's maybe struggling with change to embrace it? Because otherwise you can be like a rock that's in a stream that's diverting the flow.
You can be. And I think the first step in that is to recognize digging your heels into the sand and refusing to change usually doesn't slow it down. It just makes you look bad and be miserable. If your organization is pushing something from the top and everyone else is excited about it, and you're crossing your arms and saying, it's not going to work, there's no reason we need to do that, you're the one paying the price.
You are.
You're the one that's sitting there unhappy. You're the one that's going to be left behind. So that's a sobering truth that I say with love. Accepting change isn't agreeing with it all of the time, but acknowledging that, hey, I'm in control of my response. And the more that I resist this, the worse it's going to be for me, reputationally and emotionally.
Mm. Mm. I agree because it's so interesting. Is when people are doing that sometimes, and you're right, it's impacting their brand, it's impacting them, it's actually doing them a disservice.
Right. And that doesn't mean that you're not right. And it doesn't mean that the organization isn't making a mistake. And you certainly don't be like, okay, yes, I agree with everything. Perfect. Love it. But when it's clear that the decision is made, you gain nothing from
Yeah,
digging your heels in.
yeah. And we're in a world right now where there's a rapid rate of change in
Mhm.
everything we're doing. So if you're not able to embrace that change and go with it, what could be the consequence? I mean, that's actually in most of our job descriptions, really.
Yeah, change management is one of the fastest growing skills. That used to be some like nerdy HR topic that nobody knew about only
Yeah,
10 years ago. And now it
agree.
is center stage in leadership because things are changing so rapidly. And your ability to manage your own mindset has a ripple effect on the people around you.
Mm. Any tips on managing your boss? Because
I got a lot of
that
tips
can
on
be tricky,
managing your
can't
boss.
it?
So I'll tell you, my book, Leading Yourself, attracts someone who is usually a natural self-starter and feels some degree of that internal locus of control. And they bump up against their boss often because, number one, their boss is an imperfect person and we all have strenuous working relationships no matter what. But two, they feel limited in opportunities, in chances to contribute, in value because of this other person. And that's a challenging feeling. So if you're managing your boss, if you're managing up, it's tempting to be like, oh, well, they're in charge, right? There's nothing I can do because they are one above me in the org chart. When we flip our thinking and say, okay, I'm in charge of half of this relationship. There's two of us, and you may be one up in the org chart, but I'm going to own my part. What can I do to improve things? That's when the needle starts to move. So if your boss is a micromanager, right, they're always blowing up your phone. What can you do? You can establish a start of day, midday, end of day check in with them. Give that energy a place to land. You can get one step ahead of them and proactively keep them in the loop so much you quiet their anxiety that there's something they don't know and they need to check in with you, right? Or let's take a boss who changes their mind all the time. That's another common frustration. You are not powerless in that situation. You can repeat their expectations back to them before you deliver the project that you are working on. You can ask clarifying questions. You can talk to them about prioritization. When we flip this dynamic instead of my boss is above me and they're making my life miserable to I'm an empowered person who owns half of this relationship, what can I do? All of those idiosyncrasies become more manageable.
And on the flip of that, how should a boss, because you may find that you're managing people, and the people who are reading your book will be leading lots of folk. So how do you should you behave as the boss when it comes to receiving feedback from your whatever you what do you call them, staff, employees, associates, whatever.
Subordinates.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I hate that word.
I do too. I think it's the word on the tip of
Horrible.
one listening tongue.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you something funny that happens to me in my work on employee engagement consulting. I have a lot of leaders come to me and say, I want my employees to own their role. I want them to be that self leader, to come up with ideas, to drive results, to get things done. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. Why do you think they're not? And the
Mm,
answer is usually something to do with the boss's response to that. So if you are a boss and you want to see this level of ambition and ownership in your team, you got to nurture it and respond well when you do see it, even if it doesn't show up perfectly.
yeah.
That means when they give you a piece of feedback, instead of immediately responding, saying, tell me more. What prompted you to think that? Can you give me an example? If this is doing nothing but like enabling you to bite your tongue, that is enough. So
That's it.
often we immediately push against any effort of upward mobility and ideation and self-ownership because it feels threatening from a leadership perspective. The more you nurture it, the better it is for both parties.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a couple of times in my career where I went to my boss's boss in both instances and gave some feedback and got an explanation of the organization chart and where I sat and where they did. Um, and on that second occasion, I actually said, "Yeah, that's all fine, but if you don't do this, there's going to be trouble. You need to sort it out. So I don't care what you know where I sit on the organization, where you do. I'm giving you some advice that I think is going to be helpful. And I think it gave me some respect that I was brave enough to go and do it. Because actually it would have been very damaging if they hadn't acted.
What's interesting about that story is I think 90% of people, and I would include myself in that category, especially a few years ago, when confronted with, okay, great, here's the org chart, just so you know you are this big and your
Yeah,
opinions don't matter, that would have been the end of it. There would have been no, okay, great. Anyway, so this big thing that's going to go wrong if you don't change your mind, like the second part doesn't happen. And over time, enough of those interactions of being reminded, like, hey, you're low down, your opinion doesn't matter, you're not in charge here, that is a really damaging narrative to carry in your heart as you move through your career. And forcing yourself out of it is what opens doors to
yeah,
difference.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. On the latter one, my boss took me aside a couple of days later and said, "Chris, I heard what you said. I've been told to tell you you shouldn't have said it, but thank you because I daren't." You know?
You had a really good boss. I don't
Yeah,
think that'd be the response for
yeah,
most.
yeah. Anyway, it wasn't long after that a recruitment consultant called and I left. So, what about in situations where you disagree, with a decision? How do you behave in those situations?
We scratched the surface on this in talking about change management. And you and I talked a little bit before the show. There's this false belief in work that we either agree with a decision and move forward, or we disagree with the decision and we don't move forward. And the nuance of being able to disagree and commit to disagree with the decision and move forward is an indicator of performance and workplace satisfaction. Where we run into trouble is knowing that we disagree and it's not the right decision, but trying to convince ourselves that it is. Because unless we agree, we can't move forward. And the suggestion in leading yourself is you're working in an organization with other people, which means you're not going to agree with every decision everyone makes. That's part of the trade off for not having to be in charge of everything. And knowing in your heart that you can, okay, I disagree, I voice my concerns, but I'm fully committed to moving forward. That gives you the emotional freedom that you need to actually be creative and to innovate and to stay engaged versus harboring this resentment of this is the wrong decision. I'm going to dig my heels in for the entire time. Again, like change management, you're the only one paying the price.
Yeah, yeah. I guess though, there may be situations where people see things that are unethical, illegal, um, inappropriate. Um, then in those situations, I guess, what's the solution to that? You've got a choice. You can you put up with it or you go. Maybe.
I appreciate you calling me on my broad brushstroke of like just agree and move forward. Because there is some nuance there. And there's this big chart I made in the book about what is considered annoying workplace behavior that is ever present, what is garbage behavior that in large doses should really force you out, and what is abusive or
Yeah,
immoral behavior that
yeah,
should be an instant pivot. And being able to recognize that is a skill. A decision to use a different CRM software is not an immoral decision. A decision to lie to our customers and charge them twice because we have two different contexts inside the organization, that is not something you disagree and commit to. So there's some gray area and it's up for interpretation.
yeah, yeah. Good. So we just got, think about 4 minutes till the end of the interview. But out of all of this, if somebody's feeling very stuck, very undervalued, and they're unsure whether they should stay or go, what's your thoughts?
So I'll leave you with the dedication of my book, which is to my son. And I said, "You are never powerless." That is my core belief. Even if you are an intern at a massive company, even if you just got laid off in this really tough economy, you are never powerless. The more you can point your brain to what you do control, the more you can manage your mindset in a way that works for you. And the more you can own your part of relationships, the more likely you are to experience success and engagement at work. It is
Yeah,
all in your hands.
yeah, beautiful. Got a final message you'd like to leave us with?
I thought that was a pretty good punchline, Chris.
I thought it was great, but I think there's more.
Um, I'll tell you a funny story about leading yourself, which is leading yourself has pretty good reviews, but a few of them are not good because this book doesn't sit well with complainers, as you may have come to pick up on through the theme in this conversation. So, if you don't want to be called on the carpet, if you want to continue this notion, which is easy to do in this current world, that all the problems you're experiencing at work are because of other people and that there's nothing you can do to change this really devastating reality, then don't buy my book and don't review it either. But if you believe that you have the power to make your work experience better and you want a playbook on how to get there, this is the book for you.
Very good indeed. Well, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed the interview today. I think you've touched on some really great thoughts. I have read the book. I think it's a very, very helpful book. I think it's one of those ones where if you're particularly, I think in the in the younger, earlier starts of your career, or you're feeling stuck, there's some ideas and thoughts in there that will help and stick you, and I'm sure lead you much more onto the front foot, because it's not nice when you're sitting on the back foot, and particularly quite often we do that to ourselves and don't realize it. So this could really help you move forward. So thank you for this. Thank you for what you're doing for the world in terms of your contribution, Elizabeth, which I know is substantial. And do give my best wishes to Lisa as well. So thank you. I hope you've enjoyed being on the show today.
I absolutely have. Thanks for having me. And back at you. I surely believe that we all have the power to make work better. Now it's time to do it.
Fantastic. And on next week's show, I have a gentleman called Pushpendra Mehta, and we're actually going to talk about karma in business. I like to talk about different things, different ideas and thoughts. And he's written a number of books, and I think we'll have a fascinating conversation. I think it's what you do to one person, if it's not good, it tends to come back in other ways. So just remember that. If you kind, I always say to my kids, if you're kind, you get kindness back. If you're not, you get the other back. So I choose kindness. So take care, everybody. Go away. Think about over the next week. Leading yourself. How can you lead yourself more effectively? There'll be something in there for everybody. Believe me, there's some things in there for me to think about too. And I'm sure Elizabeth, in writing the book, there were things in there that helped you think about. In putting in the book, we sometimes write books as our own therapy. I've found from my own experience anyway, because we learn from it and we get better at it when we study it. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, and do take care, everybody. Have a great week. And if you enjoyed the show, please let other people know about it. If you want to share anything with me, it's chris@chriscooper.co.uk. And for Elizabeth, please go and check out Elizabeth's website. It's Elizabeth, that's with a Z, Elizabeth Lotardo, Lota